I'm going to share my screen with you all so that you can see my PowerPoint slides. I'm not turning on my camera today. I'm doing this class from home, and I do not have a good internet connection. I do have a good internet connection. I use PTCL broadband, but the thing is currently it is being used by 4 people together. My children are doing their classes. My husband is also using it, and I am using it, and it's not powerful enough to allow 4 people to do video sessions. For this reason, I will keep my camera off. I hope you can bear with me today.
Yes, ma'am.
But with that, I request you all to please turn on your cameras and keep them on during the whole session. G. All right, let's get started. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. All right, so let's begin. Today we are going to talk about a dependency model of mass communication effects. For my last class, I sent notes related to dependency model, and I encourage students to read the notes. However, I will explain the notes in the form of this lecture today, and then it will make more sense for you. We have been discussing mass communication effects lately, and I told you that to study effects of mass communication has been an area of primary concern for most scholars. And many scholars study effects of violence on children, effects of violence on adolescents. Some people study effects of advertisements. Some scholars similarly study effects of stereotypical presentations or TV messages or movie messages. So effects, what I'm trying to say here is that to study effects has been a primary area of concern for many mass communication scholars. And the model today that we are going to discuss, this dependency model, is also one of the effect studies. All right. Let me take you back to the previous slide again. Okay, what does dependency model says? It says that the more an individual is exposed to media content, the more dependent he or she is on media content. Does it make sense? So for example, the more I am watching Pakistani dramas, the more effects they are producing on me. I'm more into them. I am getting effects related to ideologies that they are promoting, related to attitudes that they are promoting. This is what it says. Does it all make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So the more an individual is exposed to media content, the higher the effect. The more the exposure, the higher the effect. This is what the model says. All right, here is the main postulate of the model. I wrote this postulate from a different book. As you can see, I have mentioned the name of the book in the source. I particularly chose this quotation from this book because I found it to be very helpful, and it was more helpful as compared to the book that I have been using for preparing my lectures, and the same book that I have been using to share notes with you. Let's see what this postulate says here. It says media system dependency theory asserts that more a person depends on having his or her needs met by media use, the more important will be the role the media play in the person's life. So what it essentially says is, the more a person depends on media, the more effect media will play in person's life. This is very simple. I think I can explain it better with the help of an example from my personal experiences. Let me think. So I'll give you example from my children. My son is currently 11 years old. However, when he was 4 or 5 years old, he saw this famous movie. Many of you may have watched that movie. Its name is How to Train Your Dragon. How many of you have watched that movie, How to Train Your Dragon?
I have, ma'am.
I have, ma'am.
Very good. It's a famous cartoon movie. It was produced by DreamWorks. It came out maybe 7-8 years ago, and it's really thrilling. So my son watched that movie when he was 4 or 5 years old, and he particularly liked that movie because Night Fury was his favorite dragon. And because Night Fury had all these powers and he could do all the amazing things, and he had night vision, and he had this plasma blast thingy. With that he could explode anything, remember? All right, so imagine a 4 or 5 year old child is watching that movie, and then my son watched it multiple times. He watched the movie so many times that he almost remembered it. And the more he was watching it, the more he was into it, and the more effects he was getting out of it. And consequently, a few days later, I saw him playing with his toys in a way as though he was flying a dragon. He would be playing with his toy plane, toy aircraft, toy car, and but he would be shaking them as though he is flying a dragon. And I asked him that, what are you doing here? And he told me that, well, I like to play with the dragon. Get me a dragon, because I do not have a dragon, but I'm assuming these toys to be dragons, and I'm flying them. This is the level of effect. See, the more he was watching the movie, the more it was affecting him. And similarly, I can also give another example from my daughter's experience. My daughter is younger than my son, and she usually buys toys related to movies whenever she is fond of watching Barbie movies. She has watched almost all Barbie movies, and whenever she would watch a Barbie movie, she would buy a Barbie character. She has almost all Barbie characters. So again, this is the level of dependency. The more she is watching, the more she is becoming dependent on content from media. I gave you example from children. However, it happens in cases of adults as well. The more we watch a particular channel, a particular media content, newspaper content, the more we are dependent on it. I request you all to please turn on your cameras and keep them on for the whole time, please. Now, the kind and degree of dependency actually depends on two factors that you see on the screen. The degree of dependence increases in an unstable society, a society which is suffering from instability and conflict. And this has happened in the case of Pakistan as well. I'll give you example. Think about a country that is suffering from conflict. In that situation, or think about a region which is going from instability. In that situation, people of course want to know what is happening, how the story is unfolding, how the situation is proceeding, and people are more dependent on media. I will give you an example of instability from Pakistan. In 2005, Pakistan had a very bad earthquake in some northern areas, particularly in Kashmir area of the country. Kashmir was a hard hit area, by the way. And in the wake of that event, many people were glued to TV to see what had happened, and how many people were affected, what was the level of catastrophe, what was the magnitude of earthquake, and all that. Similarly, I remember quite vividly, soon after that 9/11 incident happened in 2001, almost all family members in my life, almost all family members in my family, they were glued to TV. They were watching what had happened in the US. Okay, and it was like as the US was attacked. So this is what I'm trying to explain here, that in situations of conflict and instability, the level of dependency on media increases. Think about the example of a war-torn country, for example, Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a war-torn country. Okay? And it's a country where there is an ongoing conflict happening. In that case, again, people are dependent on media to get updated information. So the level of dependency increases in a society which is unstable and which is going through conflict. And even COVID-19 is also an example of an unstable situation. Soon after China was the outbreak of this disease happened in China, people were watching the news. I mean, the story was developing, and then the virus traveled to other parts of the world. So that was a developing story. That was an unstable situation, and people were of course, dependent on media. The level of dependency increased on media because people wanted to know that how is this now developing, what is happening, how many people are being affected, how is the outbreak happening, and especially where will it take us, that kind of situation. Then the degree to which media is important, media plays a central importance in life. Uh, in some media, examples are very important, and they play a central part in people's life. I think Hollywood is an example. Hollywood is a type of media that plays a really, really strong role in people's lives across the world. Nobody can deny that fact. We all watch Hollywood movies. Earlier, we used to watch them through cable channels like HBO and Star Movies. Now we have started watching them through Netflix. Okay? So these Hollywood movies, they are central. They play central role in people's lives across the world. And whatever information comes our way through Hollywood movies, we tend to believe upon them. We tend to okay, we sort of create our mindset. Okay, the world out there exists like this. I will give you an example here. Here on my screen, you can see I have written some lyrics from a famous movie, Aladdin. In English, they call it Aladdin. There is a Disney movie. There are actually two movies. There was a Disney movie, a motion picture that came out in 2019. But before that, there was an animated movie that came out in 1990s. I'm not sure about the year, but the animated, has anyone watched that movie? Aladdin, animated movie, Aladdin. Has anyone watched that movie? The famous characters. Has anyone watched that movie? I don't hear
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
The famous characters were Princess Jasmine, uh, and Jafar, and there was this monkey character, Abu. So when the movie begins, it begins with these lyrics. The movie begins with these lyrics. Oh, I come from a land, from a faraway place where the caravan camels roam, where it's flat and immense and the heat is intense. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home. Now, see, this is a Hollywood movie, and this is how they are portraying an an Arab land. Okay? They're saying that I come from the writer is this is how a writer is depicting Arab piece of land, Arab part of the world. I come from a land, from a faraway place. Arab is far away, of course, from west, and it's a place where caravan camels roam. It's flat, heat there is intense, and it's barbaric. But hey, it's home. By saying barbaric, probably they are referring to Bedouins. In Urdu, we call them Baddu, Arab Baddu. So by Bedouins, the writer probably is referring to those Arab Baddus. So that's why they are saying it's barbaric, but hey, it's home. Now, what happens here is that this movie, through this song, is creating an image of Arab land for the rest of the world. People who have those people who have never been to Arab part of the world, they would tend to see Arab through this media content. And I would like to share an experience here. When I was doing my doctoral studies in the US, I was there for about 6 years almost. So when I was there, I would go to many conferences and I would interact with many people from Arab countries. And once I met an Arab student in a conference in Pittsburgh. He said that in my class, my class fellows and many fellow students think that since I'm from an Arab country, maybe I own a camel back home. Maybe that is how people commute. Maybe people, go from places using camels and all that. And I would also like to share my experience when I went to the US to do my PhD. First few months, I realized that most Americans were very ignorant about my country, about Pakistan. All they knew about Pakistan was mainly Malala Yousafzai. And I heard many comments like, well, you are from Malala Yousafzai's country. Are you safe here? Is your family safe back home since you are pursuing your higher studies? But we know that whole Pakistan is not like that. So this explains people's dependency on media. Since they watch media a lot, and they tend to believe whatever information is coming their way from media. They think that, well, the whole Pakistan maybe in fact is against female education and female emancipation and all that. So what I'm trying to explain here is that if media plays a central role, media's role is important in your life, the level of dependency increases. Now I'll stop here to take your questions. Does this all make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, better please turn on your cameras. Those of you who do not have your cameras on, I request them to please turn on their cameras. Otherwise, when Maida sends me the attendance, it tells me whoever had his camera on and whoever did not. And of course, I'm not going to mark your attendance. All right, here is my next slide. This slide says that there are three elements in media system dependency model: society, media, and audience. And all these three elements are interrelated. Okay? Wait a minute. Gee. Sorry, I'll go back to my previous slide. All these elements are interrelated. Now, some societies are liberal, some societies are traditional, some societies are conservative, like Pakistan. In Pakistan, we have a traditional society, and media, of course, exists in that given society, and audience are also from that society. These three things are interrelated. Now, I can explain this with the help of an example. Let's say that in Pakistani movies and Pakistani dramas, writers, producers, and the directors, they do not usually portray sexually the content that is related to sexual intimacy. However, you usually see that sort of content a lot in movies coming from Western countries. Okay? Because our society has this religious aura. Pakistani society is also traditionalist. For this very reason, Pakistani media does not tend to portray the content which is related to sexual intimacy. This is what I'm saying, that society, media, and audience, these three things are interrelated. Media exists in the same society, and of course they tend to follow the norms, the traditions, the culture that exists within audience. All right. Social system, it varies according to its degree of stability. I have already talked about conflict-ridden areas. I have already talked about war-torn areas. I have already talked about areas where I gave you the example of COVID-19 situation. Even India quite recently has been really hard hit by COVID-19. And even myself, I have been using media a lot, TV, like YouTube channels and newspapers, to learn about the COVID-19 situation in India, which is of course a neighboring country, and people are dying there. Even a few days ago, maybe last week, I was reading a news story in Dawn newspaper, and it was saying that that grave diggers, they worked 24 hours, like without any break. Like such was the magnitude of this disease, and such was the magnitude of such was the impact of COVID-19. A lot of people are dying, unfortunately, and grave diggers were working 24-hour shifts. Somebody, maybe my brother, was telling me that they started cremating dead bodies on the roadsides. Like the situation is getting worse, and see, this is an unstable situation. So in unstable situations, people usually tend to consume media more. They are highly dependent on media, and this is absolutely related to media dependency system model. All right. Media system too varies from culture to culture or country to country. I have already explained this to you. I have told you that in our society, in our culture, our culture is comparatively traditional, religious. However, Western culture is liberal. And for this very reason, you see content related to sexual intimacy more in those sort of cultures as compared to Pakistani culture. Even I remember quite vividly when Hum TV in Pakistan, they broadcast, there were two dramas that became really controversial. One of them was Udari, I remember, and I have forgotten the name of the other drama serial. However, there were two drama serials that kind of focused on issues related to child abuse, child sexual abuse. And soon after the release of those dramas, I think Pamela or banned drama serial Udari for a while, and then it was broadcast again. However, you see, such issues, people in society, they don't feel comfortable talking about such issues in a bold way, and for this very reason, I was saying that media, culture, society, they all are they all are interdependent. Third element is audience. This element varies from person to person, and this element is a bit complicated in the context of Pakistani culture. Why is the element audience, why is the element of audience a bit complicated in Pakistani context? Let me tell you the reason. But Pakistan is a multicultural, multilingual country. Okay, we have a lot of diversity, but Pakistani media tries to cater needs according to the diverse audience. Like, we have channels in Saraiki language, we have channels in Punjabi language, we produce media content in English, and then in Urdu. However, you see, in terms of audience, um, elites usually they have access to alternate sources of media. So not everyone has, I mean, there were times that when people, not everyone had access to HBO and Star Movies and BBC and CNN. People would usually access these channels through a dish antenna. However, when cable came, cable network system came, it changed the whole thing, and people started having access to all these channels. But what I'm trying to say is that elites usually in a given society, in a given system, they have access to alternate resources. For example, not many people in Pakistan have subscription of the New York Times. It's an expensive newspaper. Not everyone can afford it. Similarly, not everyone has access to Time magazine or Forbes magazine, that are really famous for investigative journalism and for breaking news. So elites usually have access to alternate resources as compared to those sometimes non-elite majority. And I have also explained you why the concept of audience is a little bit complex in fact in the context of Pakistan. Now, what kind of effects media dependency can generate? They can be categorized in three types. There can be cognitive effects of media, when someone is more dependent on media. There can be cognitive effects, there can be affective effects, and there can be behavioral effects. What are cognitive effects? Cognitive effects are those effects that are related to our understanding, our interpretation, the way we tend to interpret things, the way we tend to make sense of things. So media dependency does affect our cognitive abilities. With that, it also affects our affective abilities. Now, let me tell you what are affective abilities. Effective affective dependency or affective changes is kind of change which is related to moods, feelings, and temperament. Many times media, I mean, the more we are watching a movie, which is, let's say, which is a funny movie, we start feeling light, we start feeling hilarious. See, that is affective sort of dependency. So any sort of change that is related to mood, feeling, temperament comes under the category of affective change. And then, of course, behavioral dependency. Change in your behavior after watching a particular TV advertisement for a really long time. If you tend to change your behavior, that will be a behavioral sort of dependency. All right. Now, here in this In this picture, we see the media system dependency model in the form of a diagram. There is a social system, there is media, and there are audiences. It's the same thing that I explained you earlier. I told you that there are three things mainly that are important in a in media system dependency theory. Those three things included society, media, and audience. And if you read the information that is given in parentheses, it's the same thing that I have explained you, that social system degree of stability varies. Even most developed countries sometimes also become unstable. Like America, United States is a politically stable country, economically stable country. However, in the wake of COVID-19, US was also very one of the countries that was highly affected, and again that became a media spotlight in the wake of COVID-19. Media system number and centrality of information functions varies. Now, how much importance people give to media, and what is the number of media channels, newspapers, magazines, radio channels available to people. So if media is diverse, if it is available in a really large number, and if it is if it plays a central role in people's life, then of course the level of dependency increases. Audience degree of dependency on information, of course, people are of different nature. Some people are more dependent on media, some are not, and then I also gave you the examples of elites and the non-elites. So the information that is given in parentheses, it explains all the characteristics that are associated with these three factors. What sort of effects this dependency can generate? Cognitive, affective, or behavioral. I have already explained this. And you can see that these arrows indicate that these three elements, they are interrelated. They are sort of interrelated. Okay. With this, I have finished my today's lecture. If you have any question, I'll let you ask that now. Ji beta, do you have any question?
No, ma'am.
Was it clear? Is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Achha. Now I want to announce the date for your midterm exams. Your midterm will happen I just wrote the date in the chat box. Your midterm will be on May 28th, which is going to be a Friday. Okay? Today is the last day of class before Eid break. After today, we will have our next class on May 17th. Okay? That will be a Monday. When you come back on May 17th, we'll have 2 more weeks until you take your midterm exam. Syllabus, let me write it in the chat box. You can see syllabus will include everything that we will have covered by May 26th. Okay? I certainly do not want to ruin your Eid break. Online teaching was a lot of work for me too, and I know that by far we have covered so many models, so many theories. So take some rest, have a really good break, and after you are back from Eid break, we'll cover some more models. And then soon after that, side by side, I'll be also discussing the format of the exam. I'll also be discussing the syllabus, the pattern, and everything. And then finally, you will take your midterm exam on 28th. Bete, ek baat sun le, today is May the 7th, and I will give you midterm on May 28th. Clearly, I have announced the date 3 weeks in advance. It is your job to make sure that you do not miss the exam. It is your job to ensure your availability. Please do not come to me with excuses that I had this reason or I had that reason for this reason I missed my exam. If you miss your exam, you miss it. It is hardly unlikely that I will give you a makeup. However, in many times I deal with such cases, with such students case by case. If a student's case seems really genuine and if he is able to produce all the evidences, I can give him a makeup exam with the deduction of a few points. Because of course, those students who have met all the deadlines, those students who have respected the deadline and they come for exam on time, of course they deserve better. So it is your job to ensure your availability on that date. Now, with that, I also want to tell you that my apologies for not getting back to you about your assessment for your exam 1, but I will be using Eid break, inshallah, to do your assessment, and I will get it to you as soon as I can. Most probably soon after you are back from Eid break. Okay? Acha ji. Any question about any of this?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Can I end
All
this?
clear, ma'am.
Ji bete?
No questions, ma'am.
Acha, I have 7 minutes left. If you have any question, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll end the session. Chalenji, theek hai. If you do not have any question, I wish you all a very happy Eid. Have a restful and productive break. Be safe. Take care. Take good care of yourselves. Stay healthy. Theek hai? Again, Eid Mubarak to all of you. Thank you and goodbye.
Ma'am, same to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Same to you. Ma'am, same to you.